They smiled. Right before the slaughter began. That was the first report Commander Zeltar of the Van Dominion received after the Battle of Carthos Prime, and it made no sense. The humans were outnumbered 40-1, their fleet vastly inferior in size, and their ships crude by galactic standards, should have been vaporized in the first 10 minutes. Yet somehow, they'd held the line for hours, and when the Van troops finally boarded their flagship, they saw something that haunted every alien who survived. The humans were smiling. No one in the Dominion understood it. To the Van, a cold-blooded, logic-driven species, emotion was a weakness. Smiling before death. That was the act of lunatics. The official report labeled humanity as psychologically unstable, prone to irrational acts of aggression. The conclusion was simple: eradicate them before their madness spreads. But Ambassador Core of the Council of Races wasn't convinced. He'd seen footage from the battle. The humans weren't grinning in fear or hysteria. Their eyes were calm, their hands steady. It wasn't madness, it was something else. He watched a close-up of a human commander, a woman named Captain Elise Ward, as enemy fire rained down around her. Her lips curved upward just before she gave the order, "Let's make them remember us." The smile was almost gentle, but behind it there was something terrifying: certainty. On the far side of the galaxy, aboard the Uns Valiant, Elise Ward stared out into the dark expanse of stars. The reports said their fleet had been destroyed. The truth was far worse. They'd been studied. The Van hadn't just attacked, they'd tested human resilience, measuring how long before morale broke. But morale didn't break. It hardened. "Captain," said Lieutenant Vega, her second-in-command, "the crew's ready, but they're scared." Elise didn't look away from the stars. "Good," she said. "Fear means we're alive." Vega hesitated. "Then why are you smiling?" Elise turned to him with that same expression the aliens would come to fear. "Because fear isn't the enemy. Doubt is." In the alien High Council, the word smile became taboo. Soldiers whispered about it like a curse. Some said humans smiled because they'd accepted death. Others claimed it was a ritual, a way to challenge fate. But Core knew better. He'd begun studying humanity's history, their endless wars, their revolutions, their stubborn will to survive. From the burning cities of ancient Earth to the first colonies on Mars, one truth repeated again and again: humans smiled when they refused to break. He wondered if that smile wasn't madness. Could it be something worse, something unstoppable? And as the next battle approached, deep in the nebula of Draxo's Rift, the Van would learn the truth firsthand. Because this time, the humans weren't defending, they were coming. They didn't. That single transmission, intercepted moments before the Van fleet was annihilated, sent a wave of disbelief through the Galactic Council. Humans, barely recovered from their previous defeat, had launched a counterattack. No species had ever done that. Not after losing half their military strength, not against the Dominion. And yet, the humans had done exactly that with a smile. The Draxo's Rift was a graveyard of broken ships and electromagnetic storms. It was the last place any sane commander would choose to fight, which was precisely why Captain Elise Ward chose it. "Why here?" asked Lieutenant Vega as the UN's Valiant drifted through the glowing clouds of ionized gas. Elise's eyes reflected the violent light of the rift. "Because they think we're predictable," she said. "They expect fear, retreat. Logic will give them chaos instead." Vega frowned. "They'll call it madness again." "Then let them," Elise replied, a faint smile forming. "We'll make madness our weapon." In the command chambers of the Van flagship Dominion's Wrath, Admiral Zelthar studied the human movements with a mixture of disgust and fascination. "They don't form proper lines," he hissed. "Their tactics are random, disordered." His tactician, a smaller Van with trembling tendrils, said, "And yet, every random motion brings them closer to our flanks. It's almost as if they silence." Zelthar snapped. "They are animals. Nothing more." But deep down, even he could see it. There was method in the madness. The humans were using debris fields, magnetic storms, and gravity wells like extensions of their own ships. They'd mapped chaos itself, and through every visual feed, every human pilot, every Marine, there it was again. The smile, not wide, not manic, just confident, unshaken. Inside her cockpit, Flight Lieutenant Ria Nakamura breathed steadily as her fighter dove through a plasma storm. Her comms crackled with static, her shields screamed warnings, but she grinned anyway. "Vega to Ria, your heat signature's spiking. Pull back." "No," she said. "I'm not pulling back. I'm guiding them in." Seconds later, 2 Van interceptors followed her into the storm. The plasma ate through their shields instantly. Ria's fighter emerged on the other side, scarred but alive. When her senses cleared, she saw Elisa's fleet already in position, surrounding the Dominion's wrath. On the alien bridge, alarms blared. "They've outflanked us," cried the navigator. "Impossible," roared Zelthar. "They should have been destroyed." But then a message appeared on Nercom's human transmission. Elise Ward's voice echoed through the chamber.com and measured. "You wanted to understand why we smile. You'll see soon enough." And then, the rift exploded in light. The humans had triggered a chain reaction, using the rift's volatile energy fields to tear open space itself, dragging half the Van fleet into a gravitational collapse. The Uns Valiant barely escaped, engines burning red hot. The Van flagship didn't. As silence returned to the void, Vega stared at the wreckage in disbelief. "You've planned all this?" Elisa's lips curved again. "Of course. They think smiling means we've lost our minds. But it only means one thing." She turned to face him, eyes gleaming. "We already know we've won." In the aftermath, the Galactic Council declared a temporary ceasefire. The Van called it a strategic pause. The humans called it a warning served. But to Ambassador Kor, watching from the safety of his observation post, that smile began to haunt his dreams. Because he realized something terrifying. The humans didn't smile to mock death. They smiled because they understood it and refused to yield. We studied their weapons, their ships, their language, but it was their smile that frightened us most. Extract from the Van Psychological Warfare Division report, Cycle 72. The Van Dominion was not accustomed to fear. For centuries, they had conquered hundreds of worlds, dissected dozens of civilizations, and broken every species they met through calculated psychological dominance, until humanity, now deep beneath the Dominion's capital, inside a fortress of glass and light, the best xenopsychologists of the Empire gathered to study their new obsession, the human smile. Dr. Drell, lead researcher of cognitive warfare, activated the Holly footage again. A human marine stood blood-soaked on a ruined battlefield, smiling as he reloaded his weapon. The alien's translucent tendrils quivered. "He smiles while dying," said Corral softly. "He knows his end is near. Yet he shows no submission." Another scientist, Dr. Vetha, replied, "Perhaps it's a bluff, a deception tactic." Carol's voice darkened. "Then it is the most effective one we have ever seen." The footage changed. Captain EliseWard.com, fearless, issuing commands with that same quiet smile. "Replay the Battle of Carthos Prime," Carol ordered. Frame 42, right before the orbital strike. As the human ships began to burn, Elisa's expression appeared on screen, serene, determined. "She knows the battle is lost," Vetha said. "Yes," Corral agreed. "But she does not believe it." They froze the image. The human eyes, focused, unshaken, seemed to stare back at them through the projection. "It's not madness," said Carol finally. "It's conviction." Meanwhile, across the galaxy, on the human colony world of New Sidonia, children were being taught a different kind of history lesson. Professor Arjun Rowe stood before his class of cadets at the academy. "The aliens believe our smile is madness," he said. "Do you know what it really is?" A cadet raised her hand. "Defiance, sir." Arjun nodded. "Partly, but more than that, it's evolution. The first humans to smile before battle did it to calm themselves, to trick fear into silence, to tell their comrades, 'I'm not afraid, so you don't have to be either.'" He looked at the young faces before him, all training for wars that had not yet begun. "When you smile in the face of death," he said, "you remind the universe that fear has limits and we do not." Back in the Dominion's laboratory, the Van Council demanded results. "Can we replicate it?" asked Admiral Zelthar, now scarred and bitter from the loss at Draxo's rift. Corell shook his head. "We can imitate the gesture, but not the meaning." "What do you mean?" Zelthar hissed. "The smile is not a signal. It's a language of emotion rooted in something we do not possess, hope." The room fell silent. "Then destroy it," Zelthar ordered. "Purge every recording. No one must see this." Contagion. But Corell hesitated. Somewhere deep inside his alien mind, something stirred curiosity and a faint echo of what humans called awe. He kept one recording for himself. A short clip of Elise Ward saying, "It's not courage if you're never afraid. It's courage when you smile anyway." Weeks later, Carol vanished from Dominion space. Rumors spread that he defected, seeking to meet the species he could never understand, yet could never stop thinking about. And far beyond the Dominion's reach, the humans were preparing something even greater, a unified fleet. Not for defense, not for revenge, for understanding. Because for the first time in their history, humanity wasn't smiling for themselves. They were smiling for the galaxy and what was coming next. "He came to us fearing monsters," He found mirrors instead. Captain Elise Ward, UN's Valiant archive. The shuttle was small, old, and half broken when it slipped through the border of Dominion space. Its cloaking field flickered like a dying candle. Inside sat Dr. Carroll, former xenopsychologist of the Van Empire, now branded a traitor and fugitive. His tendrils twitched with every flicker of static from the shuttle's comms. He'd been traveling in silence for 23 cycles, guided only by faint human broadcasts bouncing through the void, songs, laughter, voices, all steeped in emotion he couldn't fully name. Then at last, a transmission cut through the static. "This is the United Terran Navy. Identify yourself or prepare to be boarded." Carell hesitated, then spoke, voice trembling. "My name is Carell of the Van Dominion. I come in peace." There was a pause, long enough for him to imagine being vaporized. Then came a voice, calm, firm, unmistakable. "This is Captain Elise Ward. You picked a dangerous time to drop by." Dr. Carell was brought aboard the UN's Valiant under heavy guard. The humans stared at him, not with hatred, but with curiosity. He'd expected cages, interrogation, cold sterility. Instead, they gave him a blanket and coffee. He sat across from Elise in the observation deck. She studied him silently, her expression unreadable until she smiled. Carell froze. His entire body recoiled as if from a weapon. "You still fear the gesture," she said softly. "I fear what it means," Carell admitted. "Among my kind, showing teeth is aggression. Among ours," she said, "it's trust." That single sentence struck deeper than any interrogation. Carell stared at her, his mind racing. "You knew we would misunderstand it." "Of course," Elise said. "That's why we kept doing it." Over the following weeks, Carell observed the human crew. They were paradoxes. They laughed in danger, cried at small victories, sang during repairs. He couldn't comprehend it. One day he found a young engineer sitting alone, trembling after a near-fatal encounter with a malfunctioning reactor. The human smiled faintly when Carell approached. "Why do you smile when you're hurt?" Carell asked. The human shrugged. "Because I'm still here." That night, Carell recorded in his journal, "Humans do not smile because they feel safe. They smile to make themselves safe." It is self-forged courage, emotional armor that turns fear into fire. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Dominion reeled from internal unrest. Whispers spread that one of their scientists had joined the enemy. But something else frightened them more. Reports that Van soldiers, those who had faced humans, were beginning to mimic the gesture. They smiled, and when questioned, they answered simply, "It helps." The Dominion tried to suppress it, branding it an infection of the mind, but suppression only made it spread. Smiles appeared in prisons, in barracks, even among officers. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion wasn't united by conquest, but by confusion. On the Valiant, Elise and Carell stood together, staring out at the stars. "You've studied our psychology," Elise said. "Now you've lived among us. What do you think, Doctor? Are we mad?" Carell considered the question for a long moment. His tendrils rippled in thought. "Madness," he said slowly, "is believing fear must rule all things. You have found a way to make fear serve you." Elise smiled again, and this time Carell didn't flinch. He tried to imitate it. His alien features twisted awkwardly, but the intent was there. She laughed. "Not bad for a first attempt." Carell looked at her reflection in the glass, two beings from opposite worlds, united by something so simple, so dangerous, so human. And far in the distance, sensors began to detect new movement, a massive Dominion fleet, gathering near the edges of neutral space. The final war hadn't ended. It was just about to begin. Before the guns roared, before the stars burned, there was a moment of silence, and in that silence, the humans smiled. Admiral Serok of the Dominion, final transmission. The galaxy held its breath. The Van Dominion had assembled the largest fleet ever seen, 50,000 warships, bristling with plasma cannons and gravity torpedoes. Entire worlds had been emptied to fuel the war effort. Their goal was simple, to end humanity before the contagion of emotion infected the rest of the stars. The humans knew they couldn't win by numbers, but they didn't need to. They'd already won something far more powerful: belief. On the UN's Valiant, Captain Elise Ward stood before her crew in the dimly lit hangar bay. Every soldier, every pilot, every engineer was watching. Some were veterans, others barely old enough to remember Earth's sky. All of them looked tired. All of them looked ready. Elise spoke softly. "The Dominion thinks this is about annihilation. They're wrong. This is about memory." She paced slowly, her voice echoing. "They will try to erase us, to silence us. But before they do, we will show them what it means to be human. We'll face the dark, we'll look it straight in the eye. She paused, then smiled. And we'll smile. The hangar erupted in laughter and cheers. For a moment, the fear dissolved into something else entirely, unity. Meanwhile, deep aboard the Dominion flagship Relentless Purpose, Admiral Zelthar stood at the center of his bridge, seething with determination. The human infection ends today, he hissed. Erase their fleet. Burn their world. His second-in-command hesitated. Admiral, there are reports. Some of our troops. I say it. They're smiling, sir. The silence that followed was worse than any explosion. When the fleets met above the shattered moon of Trion 7, the void itself seemed to tremble. The first volleys tore through the dark, lighting the sky with ribbons of plasma. The human ships moved like ghosts, weaving through fire and debris, striking in unpredictable bursts. Their tactics defied logic. Their courage defied reason. In the chaos, Corell stood beside Elise on the command bridge. They have more ships, more power, more everything, he said. And yet you're smiling. Elise's voice was calm. Because we're not fighting to survive, we're fighting to be remembered. She turned to her crew. Activate the relay. A massive wave of data burst from the Valiant. Not a weapon, but a transmission. Across the galaxy, every species received the same signal. Live footage of humans fighting, bleeding, laughing, smiling. The message was clear. We are not afraid. In the Dominion ranks, the effect was catastrophic. Some soldiers hesitated. Others refused orders. On hundreds of ships, alien captains stared at their screens, watching their enemies die with serenity. And something inside them broke. A Varn officer whispered. They smile because they know something we don't. Admiral Zelthar roared in fury, firing on his own ships to restore order, but it was too late. The infection of emotion had spread. The fleet's perfect coordination began to collapse. Elise seized the moment. Now she ordered. Human ships dove through the chaos, targeting the Dominion's communication arrays. Explosions rippled like suns. The Relentless Purpose trembled as its systems failed. Zelthar screamed, his last words lost in static. The sky above Trion 7 turned white, and then silence. When the light faded, both fleets were gone. Only drifting wreckage remained. For a time, the galaxy thought humanity had perished. But in the months that followed, transmissions began to appear, faint signals on long-dead frequencies, laughter, music, and voices whispering the same message in 1,000 languages. We smiled, and we're still here. Kara listened to those signals from the quiet of a human medical vessel. He had survived, barely. When he looked into the mirror, he found his alien features twisted into a soft, awkward curve, a smile. For the first time, he understood. The smile was not the denial of fear. It was the transformation of it. We thought the smile was a weapon. We were wrong. It was a light. Ambassador Corell of the Unified Council, founding address. Years passed. The fires of war faded into distant echoes, leaving behind a galaxy scarred but alive. The Dominion was gone, fractured into smaller states, each struggling to understand the strange, powerful emotion that had undone them. At the heart of the reconstruction, standing where the last battle's ashes drifted, rose a new station, Haven 1, the first joint outpost of humans and aliens. It was here that a new age began, born not from conquest, but from comprehension. And at the center of it all was he stood before the assembly of countless species, beings of light, scales, fur, and metal, each gathered to hear his words. The hall was silent as he began. When I first met humanity, he said, I believed them insane. They smiled in fear. They laughed in pain. They greeted death like an old friend. He paused, his voice trembling slightly. I spent years trying to define it, to contain it, to weaponize it. But I learned the truth only when I felt it myself. Corell's face, alien and solemn, softened into that infamous gesture. An awkward, sincere, radiant smile. Humans smile because they choose to. When the universe offers despair, they offer defiance. When everything burns, they build warmth from the ashes. Their smile is not a denial of fear, it is the declaration that fear will not rule them. In the audience, Captain Elise Ward listened quietly, older now, her hair streaked with silver. She had seen the worst of war, and the impossible peace that followed. As Corell spoke, she felt something swell in her chest, pride, grief, and a quiet joy. After the ceremony, Corell approached her. You should be the one giving speeches, he said. She laughed softly. You earned it more than I did. He tilted his head. We earned it together. They walked to the viewport overlooking the stars. Thousands of ships, human and alien alike, drifted in harmony. Trade vessels, research cruisers, diplomatic envoys. The galaxy had changed. You know, Carell said, the Van still speak of the Smile Wars. They use your image in their academies. They teach their young to smile in hardship. Elise grinned. And maybe we didn't win a war. Maybe we started an evolution. Elsewhere, across hundreds of worlds, the symbol of the smile began to spread, carved into monuments, printed on banners, projected into the skies. It became the emblem of the unified Concord, representing a truth no fleet or empire could ever destroy. Courage is contagious. On a coal mining world, a Van worker looked up at the holographic emblem and tried to mimic it. The gesture felt strange, but warm. On a water planet, a young human and a feathered alien child laughed together, sharing the same expression, unaware that centuries of hatred had ended so that moment could exist. And somewhere far beyond, drifting through the void, the remnants of old warships glimmered with the light of distant suns, silent memorials, to the day when humanity taught the stars to smile. In her final log entry aboard the UN's Valiant II, Elise Ward recorded one last message. If anyone ever asks what made us dangerous, tell them it wasn't our weapons, it wasn't our strength, it was that we smiled. We smiled and refused to die quietly. Epilogue. Centuries later, explorers from a new civilization discovered the ruins of Earth, a blue marble long silent but still beautiful. Among the relics they found a small plaque, weathered yet clear. It read, "To smile is to remember that even the smallest light can defy the infinite dark." The explorers didn't understand the language, but they understood the symbol carved beside it, a simple curve, timeless and powerful. They smiled back,